Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Block My Driveway? I'll go ahead and take your vehicles. Friday night here in the country can get a little crazy sometimes, so I don't mind when my neighbors cause a ruckus or loud party as long as it's not too crazy. Tonight I'm on call for Virginia State Police towing rotation, which means I've got 25 minutes to get to wherever the wreck, DUI, impound, etc. is. As luck would have it, my neighbors are having a party, and guess what's blocking my driveway? That's right, about 25 to 30 cars. I live down a dirt road at the end of a cul-de-sac, and it's pretty narrow. One in one out type of deal, and with this rain we've been having, parking in the grass, clay, mud is really not the best idea. Even with a 4x4 it can still get tricky. I noticed a few cars coming in early this evening and walked over to my neighbors and made it pretty clear I was on call, and as long as they didn't block the road or my driveway, all would be good. No problems here. Well, I get a call from my boss asking if I can go warm up the rotator and the light-duty flatbed tow trucks. It's about 12:30 a.m., so I get my boots on and other gear, because if I'm up I might as well stay at the shop and clean a few things to stay busy and make the night move along. I get in my car, and as I'm backing out of the driveway I notice I'm blocked in. I don't mean by one truck, but by nearly 15 different vehicles. I calmly walk over to my neighbors, about a 1/8 mile hike, and as I'm looking for them through the crowd of drunk teenagers, some idiot wants to know why I'm on his property. He's not the property owner. I've never seen this classy gentleman. Finally, I find my neighbor and ask her if she can move the cars. I've got to go to work. She says in a normal tone, doesn't yell over the music, into the house, whoever's blocking the driveway next door, move your trucks, then slams the door in my face. I knock again and she answers with a drunken, oh god, this witch again? Internally I'm thinking, alright then. I do my best to explain, I'm on call and need to get out of my driveway to go to work. She comes back sloshing a natural light, exclaiming it's a party, relax. Shuts the door in my face and yells, duck that idiot. I smile, and as I'm walking away Macho Man throws a beer at me and cackles, yeah, you best leave, go on, git. I get on the phone with dispatch and call for as many trucks as we have available tonight, about 10, and tell them to come on over. Mama's got some PPI's, private property impounds. I call police dispatch and ask if they'd send out an officer in case things get out of hand. And as soon as he gets to my place, my rigs start rolling up and hooking vehicles up and taking them to the impound yard. We get down to the last 3 vehicles. A yellow Civic, gold Silverado and an old F-150. The Civic owner bolts to his car and takes off. The Silverado girl, pretty wasted, gets stuck and starts tearing up my property. Officer walks over and she throws a fit. Long story short, she gets arrested for underage drinking and DUI. The Ford owner doesn't show up. I get to work after all the impounds, and with me I brought coffees and snacks for my drivers. Tomorrow's not a business day, which means if these tools want their cars back, it's going to be the regular $289.50 plus 2 days of storage at $55 a day and a $100 gate fee. I make a note in every single storage sheet papers that the vehicle owners get to thank the girl who had the party for getting towed. Several of the kids' parents called wanting to know where their cars or trucks were. I gave them the yard address and told them they can come anytime. As soon as they started shouting about illegal tows and threatened with lawyers, I showed them pictures of their cars with no parking signs. And explained that I tried to reason with the owner of the property, me, but she was tired of being blocked in by drunken teenagers. There are signs on my road saying no parking, and not to block the driveway. Don't upset a tow truck driver, she'll legally take your vehicles. The next one is titled, I took away his ride for messing with mine. Halloween 2012. It was around 2 a.m. and I had just arrived back home from a neighborhood party. As I walked towards my house and the porch light came on, I couldn't help but notice that the left side of my car was completely covered in egg. All over the window, all over the door, all down the front windscreen and underneath the window wipers too. I was naturally infuriated, but it was Halloween after all. I had just gotten unlucky. I grabbed a kitchen roll from the house and proceeded to spend 15 minutes trying to get egg off of my car in the dark. After thinking I had finally succeeded, I decided to sit in the car with a cigarette on the driveway, and call my friend. This is where it begins. As I was sat there, I could see through the rear view mirror a car going past my house, slowing down, turning around and driving past again. It must have happened 4 to 5 times. What if these were the people who had egged my car? I thought. I explained to my friend I needed to go, put the phone down and continued to watch this car acting really strangely on the road out front, until finally it stopped, 2 meters in front of my driveway. The engine went off, and through the darkness I could make out a tall hooded figure slowly depart from his crap mobile and walk up to the rear of my car. He was checking around him, and looking in the direction of the house, before he crouched down behind my car and went out of sight. Was this the guy who had vandalized my car? What's he up to now? Without hesitation I launched myself out of the driver's seat and charged around the side of my driveway. He was obviously not expecting that, as he bolted away from the house and his car down the street in a record-beating sprint. I looked down and saw 2 massive rockets, fireworks, stuffed into my car's exhaust, which he was about to light whilst I was sat in the car. By this time he was well out of sight, so I walked up to his car. He had left the window down on the driver's side. I put my head through and saw 2 sheepish chaps sitting there silently, staring at me in complete horror, and to my surprise, his car keys were still in the ignition. I quickly yanked them out and walked back into my house. I had taken his car as prisoner on my driveway. Without hesitation I was on the phone to the police. They said they were on the way and wanted to know where this guy was. By this time he had come back to the house and began banging on the front door, shouting threats and demanding his keys back. Then the flashing lights came. I stood there holding his keys whilst he was swiftly arrested for attempted arson and vandalism. Halloween was complete. I still have no idea who he was or why he was targeting me. I did get a thank you from the police because he was known to them though. The car was removed first thing in the morning, and I assume his friends bailed out the car before the police came. The next one is titled, A Song of OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, A Holes and Fire. This all happened about 11 years ago, right around the height of the Great Recession. I had recently been laid off from my teaching position, a month after purchasing my first home, and was struggling desperately to find a new job. My now ex-wife was still in college and we were a one-income household. I know, not the smartest of me, but I was young and ambitious, and failed to foresee the school districts laying us all off. Who knew government jobs weren't secure? Act 1, the a-hole puckers. After about 6 months of struggling to even get interviews, I happened upon a position as a body shop estimator about 40 miles from my home. I say it happened, but more it was a practice in nepotism, as the manager of the shop was a friend of my father's, and, after having been on food stamps for months, I wasn't going to be picky. Anyways, so the first day rolls around and the manager is giving me the tour when, lo and behold, Bob the a-hole walks in. As a bit of context, Bob the a-hole is one of the grandchildren of the company founder, and the only child from the father's second marriage. Apparently he was conceived on an airplane when his father cheated on his mother with a stewardess. This is relevant later, I swear. Well, Bob, being a right ornery git with a rather serious inferiority complex, lays right in on me. Who the hell is this? My manager, already taken aback, introduces me and lays out the whole spiel. I shake his hand and we converse a bit. He's fairly amenable until he finds out I used to be a teacher. Now, I'm not sure what happened to this poor boy at his private school. Maybe some coach tickled his tinkler, but damn if he didn't switch moods faster than a redneck at Red Lobster. So, boy, I want you to understand something. I may be part of the family that owns these dealerships, but that doesn't mean I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. And I want you to understand something, I don't like cheats and I don't like liars, and if I ever catch you doing either, I'll make sure you never work in this town again. Well, damn. That damn near defined our working career for the next 16 months. Bit ironic, since the town was kind of podunk and I was driving there from one of the largest cities in Texas, but I digress. So, why is this all relevant? Well, you need to have a good idea of the level of aholery I was dealing with Bob. Now comes the revenge. This is a revenge plot in 2 acts. One a premeditated act of maliciousness, and the other an upset act of opportunity. Act 2, the OSH Anning. At this point in my personal Texas tragedy, it's been 6 months and I've learned that Bob's temper isn't a temporary thing. The man has repeatedly threatened myself and my boss over the past 6 months. If we didn't meet the repair quota, he was going to fire us. The process would repeat each month. As the end of the month neared, the harassing phone calls would start, then the yelling, then the screaming, then when we failed to meet quota, the in-person tirade. The manager had also hit the stage where he disappeared for the whole day to avoid the wrath of Bob and let me take the brunt of it. Considering I was making less than $400 a week and working 60-hour weeks, which was calculating below minimum wage and a FLSA violation, my level of give a crap was starting to hit its antipex. To compound my bless your heart level of annoyance, by this time I was in charge of all documentation, billing, and payroll for the shop guys. I'd become acquainted with the payroll department, with those lovely people enjoying my help, since I was a bit of a number cruncher myself, and you got a position where I'm doing everything the manager is supposed to be doing, and then some, but getting none of the pay. Now comes the first day of reckoning. Our men's restroom had been broken for 2 months, the only men's restroom in the building. We had a dead rat in the wall that had been stinking up the shop, and our steel pylons for the Bay Area had been eaten through by decades of neglect. Unbeknownst to Bob, I'd been documenting and cataloging these issues and keeping copies of every email I sent regarding the issues with our shop. Also, every time he'd berated us, I documented the outburst, what was said, and any written correspondence that backed up his behavior. After taking some lunch breaks to study up on OSHA violations, I compiled all my findings and sent them on over to OSHA with pictures, emails, etc. At the same time, I took all my documentation of every nasty thing our boss had said to us, including emails and whatnot, and forwarded that over to the head of our. Well, hell soon followed for poor old Bob. The documentation of verbal abuse and labor violations hit HR's plate and Bob's poor world blew up. He was forced to raise my pay to at least minimum wage equivalent, or forfeit working me 60 hours a week. He also was forced into anger management classes where, and this was my favorite, every time he got upset, he had to chant the mantra, kittens and bunnies. OSHA soon followed and sent out an inspector. After confirming all the issues with the shop, the dealership was given an ultimatum, bring the shop up to code or close the dealership. $50,000 later, we had a functioning bathroom, a breezy customer lounge, and supporting steel pylons that didn't groan every time a stiff wind hit. Bob stayed away for a time, but it didn't last. Being the grandson of the owner, he wasn't getting kicked, no matter how much his siblings in the business disliked him. Thus on to Act 2. Act 2, the witch slappening. Fast forward a year and Bob, being the a-hole he is, had gotten way more malicious and far more underhanded with his punishments. In the interim between Act 1 and now, he'd introduced ever more stringent red tape between our shop and payroll, billing, parts, and sales, effectively tripling the required paperwork per vehicle repair. A particular example required that we print out the email from the parts department, handwrite in all parts numbers on top of the automated numbers from the estimate. Then fax that back to the parts department while also emailing them the same said items, but in typed form. If anything didn't match exactly, then he'd try to throw a write-up at me. One time he did and I refused to sign it. Guess it never occurred to him that I would refuse, as he didn't know what to do after and never wrote me up again. By now, I had a new boss, as the old body shop manager had done right and skipped out, and this new guy was pretty much the same. I'd warned him about the tirades, but he scoffed. He learned real quick after we missed quota the first month. Anyways, I had been feeling really under the weather for the past 2 weeks, sweating, fevered, abdominal pain stretching to my back, the whole standard "this isn't a cold" feel. I went to the doctor and they found I had some nasty kidney stones that had developed as a side effect from my ADHD medication. Took me out for my whole week. Considering I only got 1 week of vacation a year, I wasn't happy. Well, I show back up a week later and Bob decides he needs to put his foot down and calls up the manager. Manager and I had gotten used to his aholery, and so he threw him on speakerphone while I listened in. Is dipshit back? Boy better have a doctor's note. Yeah, he just got here. He left the note at home, but he'll bring it tomorrow. Not good enough. You tell him to get his butt back home and bring back the note. He ain't working until you have it in hand. And don't pay him for the missed time. We got cars backing up. If I send him home, you're not gonna have some delivered on time. I don't give a crap. He doesn't work until I have that note, unless he's lying. Yeah, we saw where this was going. Considering it's a 40-mile drive one way, I wasn't too pleased, but I made the trek on back. Along the way, I saw a sign at a body shop looking for estimators, stopped on in and applied. I make it back to my business around 1 p.m., losing about 5 hours of the day to travel at this point. My manager lets Bob know and I immediately get a phone call. Took you long enough. Now, I want you to get out there and give me an update on every project we got in the shop. You got 1 hour. He hangs up before I can acknowledge. I shrug. It's about 30 vehicles. Nothing overly tough, so I head on out and get an update from all the techs. I call him an hour later and get no answer. I go ahead and email him a list of each project and where they are at so he can't pull his usual bull. The day progresses as usual when I get a call at 5 p.m., keeping in mind we close at 6 p.m., which is when I leave. I want you to close out all the projects tonight. I don't care how long it takes you. I am not legally allowed to process payment on vehicles we have not begun work on. Stop being lazy. Close them all out. The average time it took to close each vehicle with our current 90s podunk system was around 30 minutes a car. With 30 cars, we were talking about an all-nighter. Considering he'd also made our body shop repair dealer cars he had driven and wrecked, then sold them as brand new with clean records. I just wasn't having it, and had no plans to break the law for in a hole I didn't like, so I closed the 10 that were ready to close and left at 8 p.m. Next day, oh hell. Next day was rough. I walk in per usual and get to work when I get a phone call from Bob. Who the hell do you think you are? I told you to close out all the vehicles. Why the hell didn't you? I told you. I'm not breaking the law. I closed out the 10 that were done, stayed over my hours, which I am not supposed to do, and completed as many as possible. He rambled on and ranted for a bit and I took it in stride. I'd written his ire off until he took it one too far. Bullshit. You're just lazy. See, this is why you're at where you are and I'm at where I am. I know how to work for a goddamned living. I saw red and got quiet. What did you just say? Bob knew he'd stepped in it, but being the ornery shit he wasn't going to back down now. I said what I said, boy. You're lazy, entitled, don't work for crap, and incompetent. And you should be thanking me for where you're at. I lost it. Listen, water boy. The only reason you're at where you are is because your daddy got drunk, ducked a stewardess to join the mile club, and got stuck with you. I slammed the phone down and immediately sent his sister, the president of the company, a list of all the crap he'd pulled and how he'd tried to make us break the law, as well as his shady dealings with fixing dealer cars under the table and then selling them as brand new. Considering Bob's sister despised him, you can imagine her delight at having solid evidence against her littlest brother. As fortune would have it, I got a call on my cell 10 minutes later saying I had the job at the other location, looked at my manager and quit. Epilogue, kittens and bunnies. The next day, after having never felt freer, I received a call from my now ex-manager. Bob and his sister were at the shop and were shutting it down. Bob had been planning to shut the shop down, but didn't want to give up the profit. He had tried to have me close the vehicles out so he could claim the profits for his shop and pocket the percentage commission, force the other dealerships in his family's business to eat the cost of repairs, then was going to use the added profits as leverage to pitch to his daddy, the owner, over his sister's head, and move himself to a new dealership that made more money. My emails didn't stop the body shop getting closed, but since his sister got wind, she shut his dreams down, sidelined him at the low-performing dealership for another 5 years and got him sent back to anger management, all while moving the rest of the employees to other dealerships within the company, and at a higher pay rate. Last I heard, he was still practicing kittens and bunnies every time he gets all heated. The last one is titled, How a Simple Apartment Move-Out Turned into a Total Clusterfuck. Had a great job, boss was fired, they scammed me, fell on hard times, nobody's fault but my own. Had to rent an apartment for a very long ugly year. Got a huge, pretty new apartment for about $1,000, but had to meet income requirements, which sadly I did. Right before move-in find out the garage and water aren't included, and will cost extra, and that my 1-year lease is actually 5 months. Too late now, fine. Then find out I'm not allowed to use my own washer and dryer, but have to pay $100 per month for theirs. $100 a month? Okay, fine, whatever. Turns out this was all to plan. This is how they get you. From move-in on, things are bad. Roaches in the kitchen, everything falling apart, and despite being a very new building, the walls are paper thin. Turns out he's an unabashed new-era slumlord. He gets massive tax credits for renting to low-income people, but there's no requirement to actually rent to them, us, for cheap, just that we're there. 5th month ends and I get my lease renewal. That $1,000 jumps to $1,450, which is way above market for this place, or any place in the area. I sign for another 6 months but start planning to move out. I start hearing from all the neighbors that I'll never get the deposit back, and it makes sense, considering what scummy dirtbags these people are. I make friends with everyone in the office, keep my place clean and stay out of trouble. Move out time comes. Everything is left perfect and I not only take pictures, but a 10-minute room-by-room walkthrough on video. Literally nothing is out of place. No damage, no mess, nothing. Move in ready. Get the letter and my $500 deposit is gone, plus I need to pay them another $275 for the damages. Here we go. I tell him I documented everything, there's nothing to bill me for, and demand a receipt. He sends over a handwritten, illegible invoice for a company with a name that can't be found on Google and no contact information. I was prepared for this. I launched a website about the apartment complex and pre-stocked it with about 50 articles detailing in 100% truthful ways how they are dishonest and unscrupulous. I used screen grabs from their website where it said you could use the cabana, even though you couldn't. That there was a media room for parties, but no sign-up and no way to use it. I showed tenant reviews on websites dating back years even before I was there, and I kept negotiating. First, he waived the $275 premium, but no way man, I wanted my $500 back, and I was just bitter enough to get it. Meanwhile, because of my new job, CO at the time, I was able to outrank him in searches for his own apartment building. If you Googled it during your apartment search, you found my site about how evil it is at number 1, not his official site at about number 4. We talked on the phone, and while he was still unaware of the site rolling out a new article every day, he set the final offer at keeping $300. I told him I need all of it, and that was that. Anything less would be cause for continued action, and I knew he didn't know what I was inferring by that. He mailed the $200 check, but still didn't know about my site. Well, have to fix that. Called a former neighbor and told them the dish. She was a busybody, and sure enough, 2 days later I got a furious call, not from the manager, but from the owner. This guy owns a dozen properties like this, each with 300 to 500 units, and now I'm wasting his time personally. This was getting tasty. I explained what happened, but he already knew, and at this point 30 articles had run, some of which were picked up by other websites, which I may or may not have been a contributing editor to at the time. I never lied, I never exaggerated, I just reported the honest truth. No legally actionable problems on the horizon. He said, "Look, I'll give you the $300, just take this down." I explained I couldn't do that. They had the opportunity to do the right thing before the site went up, but to take it down now would be tantamount to extortion, and that would be illegal. Over the next week, with another 7 articles dropping like clockwork, he tried 10 different ways to goad me into extorting him, but I just wasn't interested. No, he drew the line in the sand, I was just staying on my side of it, legally, if not morally. Ultimately, he decided that since I was so good at web stuff, he should hire me for $1,000 to do some promotion for him. I said, "Okay, but you know this is totally separate from my site and our disagreement." And he agreed. I met him at his office, we worked up a plan, I did about 30 minutes of work and he cut me a check for $1,000. So what did I do with the website? Well, I certainly didn't take it down. What? We agreed that was separate. But I didn't add any new content and turned off the auto-renewal, so 10-ish months later, it faded away. Fair is fair, right? I could list for you dozens of ways they were shady as hell, but this is already too long. Thanks for listening.